Now we have a problem. 2 times 3 times 2 times 3 times 1. Well, 2 times 3 is 6, so we replace these with a 6. 6 times 2 then is 12. 12 times the 3 is 36, and 36 times 1 is 36. So if I have these numbers and they're all positives, I'm going to get 36, okay? Now, what if one of the numbers is negative? Well, if you don't have any negatives at all, it's plus. I mean, that's obvious. No negatives at all, you have a plus. If you have one negative, we already know it's negative. If you have two negatives, it's positive, isn't it? Right? Well, it can't be like 1. This is what happens with 1. 2 has to be what? If it's not like 1, it has to be like this one up here. So the 36 here and 36 here. So if you don't have any negatives, or if you have two negatives, you're still getting a plus 36. Okay? Now let's see what happens not with 1 or 2, but what happens if you have 3 negatives? Well, 3 negatives is different than 2 negatives. Okay? So 3 negatives, now 2 negatives is positive, isn't it? 2 negatives make a positive, and 3 negatives to be different must make a what? A negative. Okay? So let's see. We've got 1 negative or 3 negatives. Either one, you still get a negative 36. Okay? Now we're going not 1 negative, 2 negatives, 3 negatives, but how about 4 negatives? Well, 4 negatives can't be like 3. And 3 was negative, so 4 must be positive. So 4 negatives is really like 2 negatives, is really like no negatives at all. Okay? And 3 negatives is like 1 negative. Okay? So let's count. 1 negative, 2 negatives, 3 negatives, 4 negatives. What if you had 5 negatives? What if they were all negative? Well, it can't be like this one, because this is what happens when you have 4, so it must be like this. Now 5 negatives is like 1 negative, okay? 5 negatives is like 1 negative. And 3 negatives is like 1 negative. In fact, 1 negative or 3 negatives or 5 negatives, you're getting a negative 36. Or 0 or 2 or 4 are all positive answers. You see a little pattern here? If you have 1 negative, it's negative. If you have 3 negatives, it's negative. If you have 5 negatives, it's negative. Count with me. 1, 3, 5. What's the next number? 7, isn't it? Okay. 7 negatives will be negative. Okay. But if you have 2 or 4 or 6 or 8 negatives, you're going to get a plus answer. Okay. So here's the pattern. When you're multiplying and dividing integers, an even number of negatives, like here's an even number 0 or 2 or 4, they all give you what kind of an answer here? Okay, so an even number of negatives gives you a plus. Remember we said 1, 3, 5, 7 a minute ago? Those are all odd numbers, and they were all negative, weren't they? Okay, so let's go look at our back here, and we'll say 1 is the same thing as 3 is the same thing as 5. The answer for 1 negative is the same as the answer for 3 negatives is the same as the answer for 5 negatives. Okay? So 1, 3, 5, they're all odd numbers and you're getting a negative answer. So an even number of negatives gives you a plus, an odd number of negatives gives you a minus.